Hello everyone and welcome to the developer update session. My name is Chris Chabot and I head up the developer relations team at R3. If you've ever hung out on the public Slack channel to ask questions or Stack Overflow, you've probably met some of my team members. And obviously, as being the team that works directly with developers, we care a lot about the developer experience. And we've been working on some fantastic updates to make your lives a little bit better and easier. And we're excited to share those with you today. So first of all, one of the really interesting things that's been happening in the developer sphere is that Microsoft Visual Studio Code has become incredibly popular. In fact, if you look at the last Stack Overflow surveys, there's more than 50% of developers using Visual Studio Code now. Now, I've been in this industry for way too many years, and I've never seen one IDE capture over 50% of the market. So that's pretty incredible. And with that in mind, we felt it was important to make sure that anyone that uses Visual Studio Code has a first-class development experience on it as well. So one of the things that we've done is that there's a whole bunch of specific configuration that needs to happen whenever you want to run the unit test for Corda or debug any of your applications and get everything working smoothly. If you remember your first experience with IntelliJ, you probably remember having to add some JVM arguments and a couple of other workarounds to make things running smoothly, right? And especially for beginning developers, that can be confusing. So what we've done in all of our getting started projects, templates, bootcamps, and sample applications, we've added in the JSON configuration files to make everything just work out of the box in Visual Studio Code. So you can just do a git clone on any of the starting projects, open it up, and you're up and running, which is pretty nice. Of course, we weren't satisfied with just basic support, right? So we developed a new extension for Visual Studio Code that helps you do everything from creating applications, running it, building it, and deploying it. The extension also has a few other nice features in it. There's a query vault, query tool, which allows you to just query everything that's in the vault, see what's happening there. The tool I'm most excited about myself is the Transaction Explorer. We've built this into the IDE itself, and it uses a little Java bridge in the background to have real-time updates for everything that happens in the node. So when you run your nodes through the IDE, run your commands against it, you will get live updates of all the transactions and states that are happening in real time. Now, generally speaking, not having this visualization of all the activity that is happening is one of the things where developers sometimes get a bit stuck or confused, or they're not quite sure where the errors are happening. So I suspect this will make a lot of lives a lot easier. Now, if you want to check that out, this has been available as of this morning. We've just launched it. So if you go to Visual Studio Code and you go to your extensions option, or you go to this webpage, you'll be able to download the Corda extension as of today and get up and running with it. Now, we were so excited about how well that experience works in Visual Studio Code that we decided to also put a hosted version online for anyone who wants to try out a new feature, see what a new SDK is capable of, or just hack away on some code to try Corda out. You can now go to ide.corda.net and get your own personalized hosted version. When you go there, it will redirect you to your own personalized URL, which is a randomized name. And anytime you go back to that, it will just restore the state and you can continue where you left off. Our plan is to make sure that with every release as of today, we will include a link that allows you to start testing out whatever we just released in that IDE with one click. Now finally, one of the things I'm really excited about is the uptake we're seeing in the ecosystem. So Corda has, of course, been quite well known in a whole bunch of industries, but we're now seeing adoption with tools that are really popular in the Ethereum space. I think most of you will probably have heard of Truffle Ganache. And that's the tool that a lot of DApp developers use to run their own local blockchain. Because of course in Ethereum, you have to pay gas to do anything in the public chain, and you don't want to pay money just to be able to develop, right? So that is a tool that allows you to run your own local blockchain. So they're expanding that now to add Corda support to it as well. So through that tool, which one of the sessions is talking about today, or has talked about today, I guess, is It gives you the power to just configure all the nodes you want to run, give them the right names and configurations, then run it from that tool. So you can design a network from a nice visual UI without having to bother with all the configuration files. Web3 Corda might be known here as well. It's one of the tools that allows you to either build an Android application that connects to Ethereum blockchain or do enterprise integrations in Java. Now, of course, Corda was already built for that, and we already have those integrations, but there are a lot of developers who were used to using these tools, and thanks to these, they can now get up and running with Corda with a minimal effort in an environment they're already used to. Another question we get quite often when we talk to developers is that Java 8 has been end of life, and that means that there's no support for it anymore, right? So what they're hoping for is Java 11 support, obviously. That's the new OpenJDK-based Java version. And we've got a live version of that now in our branch for 4.4, which is still under active development. So you will have to check that out yourself, build it yourself if you want to try it out. But if you want to evaluate how your applications and platform will work with a Corda running on Java 11, you can try out this developer preview as of today. Now, one of the things we're excited about is that we're seeing pretty significant performance increases with this version as well. So we don't have any official numbers yet, but we've seen anything up to 20%, which I thought was pretty incredible. So that'll be fun. It does require a custom version of Azul Zulu. We've worked with the vendor to get the fixes integrated into that version, and that will be released in early November. The initial release should be coming out, well, end of this month, beginning of the next month. So you'll be able to try it out from then on. Now, finally, one of the challenges that people face when they're building their Corda applications is how to integrate that node into your own backend. And to talk about that, I'd like to invite Fuzz on the stage to talk about the awesome work he's done there.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? Isn't that incredible? I think it's a really fantastic package, yeah. Awesome, awesome work, fantastic. Thanks very much. It's kind of interesting, this space around integration, and what we wanted to do was to do something different. So actually, before I start, my name's Fuzz. You may have heard of me in the community. I'm one of the maintainers for Cordite NMS and the Cordite project. I work for Lab577, and we've been doing this really fantastic project with R3 and Web3 labs for the past few weeks. So without further ado, writing a Corda app. It's so good. This is the dream, right? You write a Corda app, you write a web service, you integrate it into your systems, and you become famous and rich. It's awesome. It's awesome. Trouble is, reality is a little bit different, right? And actually, a lot of times, I keep scanning like Slack to see what people are talking about. And I've been doing that since the outset of when Corda became open source a couple of years ago now. And often, I just see so many articles or issues popping up saying, how do I do Spring with Corda? Can you show me how it's done? And people will go away and sit there and read articles about how to use Spring. They'll write their web services. They spend a lot of time testing it because it can be a little bit fragile. They'll have to map between the domain model inside Corda and their Corda apps to the world that they want to expose outside. Find a whole bunch of issues, performance issues, security concerns, and then spend a bunch of time debugging. And all this time, you're kind of spending all your time down in the depths rather than focusing on where the value is. So I know that there's actually, this is true because there's loads of evidence that I've collected. I've got like snippets of people going, I don't like Spring, or it doesn't work very well. Actually, how many people here are Corda app developers? Just as yeah, quite a few. And you've written your own Spring servers, I guess, like web services as well around that? Yeah? Okay, so where this actually really impacts, where it really hurts, is twofold. Really large companies, enterprise companies, tend to not expose non-standard protocols for their own internal services. I've worked in quite a few of them. They prefer to have open protocols that they can monitor, they can maintain, they can administer. And so in many places I've worked in, HTTP is the first go-to protocol to say that we want to expose another private protocol is a big deal in some of these cases. The second one is that startups and small to medium businesses, they just want to get going as quickly as possible, build it, get it working, demonstrate its value there, and then iterate. And I must admit, R3 and the community have done quite a lot of work to try and help developers. So there's been really nice articles by Eric. Dan's done some really great articles as well. There's been the work that was done on chord beans. Is that the right way of saying it? Okay, yeah, cool. And also the work that I did around Braid. But there's still work to be done, and it just gets in the way. What if it could be as simple as this? You write your Corda app, and you start integrating straight away. And it works like this. You have your Corda node. You start up what we call the OpenAPI Connector. It directly binds to your node with appropriate authentication and automatically discovers the Corda apps that are available, exposes that as a set of Swagger REST OpenAPI endpoints, and then you can start straight away code genning from that into your app without any middleware being written in the process. So, gosh, the exciting bit. Okay, we're going to do some demo work. So, I've got a Corda app that I'm running. It's let me just show you what that looks like. So, it's a fairly typical standard starter Corda app. This was actually written by the fantastic developers in DevRel, Peter Lee, and I can't remember everybody else's name, but they did a really nice job with this. They wrote a Corda app, and they said, okay, Fuzz, let's see if it works. So they went ahead and wrote some code. And they used the OpenTools API. There's a tool set that comes from OpenAPI tools, that's right, where you can get a nice CLI tool that code gens directly from the Swagger JSON and produces the bindings. And that's what they did. They just simply brought it in as part of their code gen package here in their app. And they've put together a nice little React app that sits on top of it. So I'm just going to demonstrate that working. So first thing we do, we've got our nodes running. It's Blue Peter style. And now we can go ahead and start up our connector. So I've downloaded the jar. It's currently a download, but in future it'll be integrated into Gradle. So I'm just starting up that jar, pointing it to the right place, giving it some config, essentially where to connect to. And I'll start it up like this. Okay, so it started up quietly by itself. And I should be able to now just go to the endpoint that I asked, and there's the Swagger endpoint. A nominal start on the Vault API and the Corda APIs, but also all the Corda apps you have there available, all the flows that you have there are exposed as well. So you can do kind of queries like looking up nodes on the network. There's various ways of doing that, REST style. You can do Vault queries, and you can invoke those flows. What's also interesting is that it pulls together all the different types in the Corda ecosystem's APIs and brings them all out into Swagger, which is actually quite a challenge if you think about it, because there's the world of Kotlin and generics and inheritance and so on, and the world of Swagger where it's not really designed for that first. But what we've done is to create this really nice way of automatically generating that hierarchy. And we can talk about that later on afterwards if you like. So let's go ahead and start Peter's app. Yes. Okay. So there it's connected to the node via this runtime. There was absolutely no middleware at all involved in writing it. And all we're now focusing on is just writing the value add, which is the app itself. So he's provided an endpoint to view the network, and he's created a form where he can issue some tokens. So There you go. Did you see that? I'll do another one. It pops up at the bottom. There you go. And that's the demo. All good? So how does it work? There's a lot that goes inside this to make it work really well. There's a lot of ways of doing it which is really hacky and won't work very well. What we've done is introduced, we've taken Swagger 2, Jackson of course, and we've introduced a specialized type hierarchy modeler, which examines the type hierarchy, constructs that hierarchy in a way that is exportable into Swagger and into the world of REST. There's 0 annotations involved. You don't have to decorate your types at all, although it does look for any annotations you put there. So if you decide to document it up, add some example, people do that with Swagger. They usually annotate and go, well, here's an example of how you would use this API. It'll respect that. To make things nice and fast in terms of the deserialization, it generates bytecode that represents payload types and all those sort of things that don't naturally come out of your Corda app, but are there as part of your method signatures for your flows. And it's got a really super fast async web server underneath that powering it. So that's using Vertex. And that's basically the structure of it in one short sentence. So the plan, so far, we've got a full type-safe model hierarchy. There's quite a bit of Corda API integration, but there's more to do, of course. All the flows that you have will be presented out to the world so you can execute those. And you can also query the vault. Things coming up. We're going to cross over the code over into GitHub as part of the Corda ecosystem. Gradle integration, so it's nicely automated into your Gradle flow. A whole bunch of stuff around observing notifications, webhooks for progress tracking and for vault track buys. And finally, OpenRPC support. OpenRPC is the kind of JSON RPC sister to OpenAPI. So you get nice JSON RPC capabilities, streaming capabilities with that. It's really great. So just wanted to give you a background. All of this stuff started out somewhere inside Cordite a long time ago. And it's a place where we kind of always are experimenting with new things. What you've seen there is a kind of next generation of Braid, but it's going to be completely rebranded, and it has a far better integration with Corda than it's ever done before. And you've seen the screenshot, and that's it. Thank you very much for attending the talk. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. There's a couple of URLs there that you can go and see the code and instructions for getting yourself started. And I want to say a massive thank you to R3 and also to Web3 Labs, who we've been in deep collaboration with in this piece of work. If you get the chance, please go and see their talk later this afternoon where they show what they can really do with this capability. So they've done some really nice things within Web3 Corda. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay, so we have one question on the app, which says, how does OAC handle user permissions?
Yeah, so it mirrors what's available from the Corda node itself. Who asked the question? I don't know if it's... Hey, hi. So the current default model is that it just simply mirrors what the Corda permissions are on the node. So you can configure your node to use Shiro, to use some auth provider, and that will just be reflected out. We have considered the idea of adding in separate third-party auth providers as well, because some enterprises would probably ask for that too.
Regarding the Java Virtual Machine version, you mentioned Zulu version 11, and is that because of the Oracle licensing, and is this the only one supported?
So Java 11 is based on OpenJDK instead of the Java code base, so that's a rather major change. And that's probably why we're seeing all those performance improvements as well. Azul is one of the companies that provides an enterprise-grade version of it that is supported as well. And they are the company that we've worked with to apply the fix that Corda requires for everything to work perfectly in our support for Java 11. And they're the provider that are launching that first. As soon as that's up and running, that should be backported to the normal OpenJDK version as well. But so if you want to have the best supported version, then we recommend using the Zulu version.
Could you spin up multiple instances of OAC to talk to the same node?
Yeah. Sorry, that was a short answer, but yeah. So it's stateless. It's to a degree it's stateless. So when the webhooks capability comes in, so there's work that's being planned and done, if you like, within the core in order to facilitate durable delivery of messages when you're tracking the Vault, for example. But until that's done, the implementation of webhooks that will come along will need to have durability inside the OAC server for the time being. So for REST requests, fine. For doing webhooks, if you want durability, then it's got to be somewhere, I guess. So what we've done with the Vault queries, we had this choice where we said, oh, we could create our own DSL for doing queries, and then we'll be kind of struggling with two different versions of a query language. So what OAC does is mirrors out the type system, which you can imagine is kind of tricky, the whole type system from the query API that the Vault provides. It does that by respecting the generics and also bound types. So when you have a query of, and you specify the particular state types you want, that's all reflected in the API as well. That was the hardest part, actually. That was some, and to make it work in a way that is not brittle. You want to make it so it's completely generic and it works in a number of different use cases. So far only, Peter tested on JavaScript. I've been doing tests on TypeScript and with C#. They're okay. There are some changes that we want to put back into the code generators to give even better naming and package control. So all the types that you see there are fully qualified, and most code gens will just kind of compress that.
Thank you so much, Fuzz.
Thank you. That's great. Good questions.
Big thanks to Chris and Fuzz. Could we get another round of applause, please?